don't mind me here, just looking at all the WWF people that I can negotiate with. Looks like I'm bringing in Bob Orton Jr. But as exciting as that is, it's not as exciting as today's episode. We have an excellent one planned. This special Saturday edition of TEW Dark Side of the Ring Companion. We're going to be pulling up season 5, actually, of Dark Side of the Ring. I'm going to try this out. I think I have everything working that I can watch a couple episodes on here. So we'll see. There might be ads. I don't know.
The nastiest, steamiest individual standing right here.
Terry was a beast. He was a perfect Goliath.
A prodigy who broke into the business before he could drive.
Just drove
The first time I'm watching along with
Terry
y'all.
Gordy's skill in the ring was matched only by his legendary toughness.
Terry had the ability to make just about anybody look good as long as they were willing to pay the price.
He was 300 pounds, and when he picked you upside down and dropped you on your head, you're pretty much done.
Gordy's career skyrocketed as part of the Fabulous Freebirds, a tag team trio that revolutionized the business with their in-ring theatrics and total commitment to their rock and roll lifestyle.
Once the jack started flowing, the birds were ready to party with anyone or fight anyone.
Do what the big boys now.
They believe they are rock stars, so they act like rock stars.
Gordy's no-holds-barred style would take him around the world, but also accelerate his self-destructive behavior.
Terry was his own man. Terry did his own thing.
The lifestyle that he led, he could have died 100 different ways.
You can go from being on top of the world and have it all taken from you in a moment.
Until a flight on a routine trip to Japan would drastically alter his career and the man himself.
Even though he came back, he didn't come back as a wrestler and he didn't come back as Terry.
He was never the same, never even remotely the same.
Guys, first match, 5 minutes.
My name gets me noticed. Like, oh, another second gen, Terry Gordy's daughter. I am Miranda Gordy, and Terry Bam Bam Gordy is my father. They expect me to be just as good as him, and that's just not the case. So that's caused a little bit of pressure on me that I have got to fill those boots.
Those are some big shoes to fill.
Oh, the boot comes off. Gordy smashing on Bruiser Brody's head.
My name is Ray Gordy, and I am the son of Terry Bam Bam Gordy. People would remember me as one half of Jesse and Festus and Slam Master Jay. The reason I didn't use my father's name in WWE is simply because I didn't feel that I could live up to it.
Terry Gordy is fixing the best loose.
He told me one time that once you learn how this business works, you'll never want to do anything else.
Here's Gordy from the ropes.
And that was his mindset. He never seen himself doing anything else.
Terry Gordy.
Born in Rossville, Georgia, Terry Gordy is barely a teenager when he gets his start in the wrestling business.
I have some early stuff of my dad. That is a report card. It looks like a couple of F's.
Those days he was absent, he was on the road. This picture,
Yeah.
that is a very young Terry Gordy.
40 pounds, Terry Meeker.
Because of Terry's size and his eagerness, by the time he was 14 years old, he was wrestling on television. I'm Jim Cornette. I've been involved in a variety of ways in professional wrestling over the last 40-something years. I first met Terry, he was 16 years old. He was already a professional wrestler and had been for a couple of years at that point. You could use the word prodigy, you could use the word natural. Whatever it was, he had it.
He's getting a couple of licks in.
He was a prodigy, but that doesn't mean he didn't work hard and study the game. My name is Mick Foley. I'm a 3-time WWE champion, and I am sometimes known as the Hardcore Legend. What he lacked in traditional schooling, he picked up with an education on the road second to none.
This young lad here is going to, I think, become a superstar. He has all of the makings.
When you started getting the full Terry Gordy, not only the physical aspect, but the verbal, he was an all-around performer. There was almost nobody that could touch him.
Get your sister, get your daddy, get them all around the TV. Because you fixed an eyewitness something.
When Terry was in Mississippi, he met a guy named Michael Hayes.
There it is, Michael Hayes.
Michael was a natural talker. You hand Michael a microphone and he could go on forever.
When you want to talk to a lady, you say, hey baby, why don't you put on some Teddy Pendergrass, close the door, let me do what I want to do, because all I want to do is what you want me to.
His mama must have had a hard time with him. I am Jimmy Jam Garvin, and I am a member of the Fabulous Freebirds WWE Hall of Famer.
On that note right there, it doesn't look like it has any ad slots, but hopefully it won't. It'll continue not to. But we don't have Jimmy, unfortunately. I don't think Garvin's here. We just have Hayes and Gordy. But I think I've got an idea here. So we have Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy, the Fabulous Freebirds. Hayes is a heel, and Gordy is a babyface. I think that basically the Freebirds, or, Michael Hayes, but Michael Hayes, acting on behalf of the Freebirds, makes some kind of alliance with the Four Horsemen. And basically, Flair says Arn and Ole are going over. Obviously not fixing a thing, like it's already a thing, but basically not a finger poke of doom, but like the wrestlers he's influencing them to kind of put over Arn and Ole, and be like, we're the other tag team of the Horsemen, basically, joining in. So then they're Ric Flair's Four Horsemen. Not that the Four Horsemen was always four anyway, but I think Gordy splits. I think the Freebirds split up over this, and I think Hayes goes with the Four Horsemen, and Gordy's out. Gordy's a solo. And we might give him a title run. I know we're splitting up a lot of tag teams here with them and the Steiners both, but there's going to be some good storylines that come out of it, I think.
And it's still not my fault.
Some great tag team opportunities.
Michael and Terry, they were just both live wires. Terry would almost know what Michael's thinking, before Michael even said it, and vice versa. They were just tight.
You got Michael Hayes, who would come out and he would piss people off.
As always, a big conflict.
He would talk himself right into the corner. But then behind his back, you got Terry Gordy.
As a team, they were just unmatched. They just were like soulmates as far as friends go.
Michael was a big fan, as every Southerner was in those days in the 70s, of the band Lynyrd Skynyrd. Michael had the idea, what about if we called ourselves the Freebirds? Monday night in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum, I was a photographer at ringside, and all of a sudden, over the PA system, here comes Freebird.
And he's already a heel.
And then out comes Terry and Michael, these silver robes flowing everywhere, and they're doing a slow motion strut to match the beat of Freebird.
there you hear it, the music of the fabulous Freebirds, Terry, Gordy, and Michael Hayes.
This was back in the day where if you went to an arena event, the bell rang and the wrestlers walked to the ring and they got introduced. There was no music. And I said, you know, I think this might catch on.
The Freebirds soon joined Mid-South Wrestling, where promoter Bill Watts pairs them up with Buddy Roberts, converting the tag team into a trio.
You got the Freebirds' attention, and that just might be your downfall.
Buddy was the veteran, Michael was the promo, Terry was the physical enforcer.
Watch that head bite the dust.
And that three-man combination made one of the most legendary tag teams in the history of wrestling.
Together, they were bigger than the sum of their parts. And I think it's important to point out that this was not a case of lightning striking once. They got over everywhere they went.
The fabulous Freebirds are winners of the bout. The fabulous Freebirds got through with a victory. Welcome back to the wild and wonderful Freebirds.
Then they had the natural 3-on-3 rivalry with the Von Erich boys in Dallas.
Deep in the heart of Texas, world-class championship wrestling is dominated by the three eldest sons of promoter Fritz Von Erich: David, Kerry, and Kevin.
The Von Erichs.
The Von Erich boys were already popular, but the Von Erich boys had never been tested.
We wanted badasses, and that's who the Freebirds were.
Backbreaker across the knee of Michael Hayes.
I'm Kevin Von Erich, and for years I've battled the Freebirds. They were legitimate rough guys, you know, and they didn't have any apologies for anybody.
Oh, that fella hit the deck.
But we had a common goal. We wanted to put the best wrestling match we could in that ring, and so it was just a marriage made in heaven.
Here comes Kevin.
Wrestling in the mid-'80s in Dallas was the top of the game. We were selling out every venue, everywhere, every night. But the magic really hit when the Freebirds came.
I'm talking about them Von Erichs.
Oh, yeah.
They don't stick their nose in the Freebirds business.
My name's David Manning. I was the promoter, booker, and referee for World Class Championship Wrestling.
In this match,
The Von Erichs were like the good cowboy.
essentially,
And here was three guys that were obnoxious, rude to the fans.
Gordy.
Well, let me tell you something,
beating him
Texas. There ain't no place that I would rather be than
Helping
in
the heels.
Georgia right now.
Kevin referred to him as filth.
Michael Hayes is
Getting
bringing
all
the
back
flag.
Terry and Michael come to the ring,
basically
they've got
threatened to
Dixie
join
flying,
the horse
and they're
because
talking about
Flair does
Texas.
this promo.
It just burned me up. And so I grabbed the mic and I said, you got everybody in the world thinking this is a war between Texas and Georgia, and this is not. This is a war between decency and filth.
There was so much love for the Von Erichs, but there was total hate for Michael, Terry, and Buddy.
They could get a ton of heat because of the way they acted, the things they said, the things they did.
That's your friend right here, boy. What you think about it?
I didn't want my dad to get beat up, but I was still a fan of the Von Erichs.
And it looks like a barroom brawl.
Who didn't love the Von Erichs?
All the adoring young ladies. David.
Some of the guys who didn't like the Von Erichs because their girlfriends liked them, they're saying, well, look at these shit-kicking, Jack Daniels drinking, flag-waving, Southern assholes. So they started getting in the Freebird camp.
I think the Freebirds were the original cool heels. Far more often, they were the cooler of the two teams in the ring.
For the next 2.5 years in every city in Texas, it was the Freebirds against the Von Erichs.
I'm gonna tell it! I want Terry Gordy and I just want to just beat him. I want to hurt him.
They'll take Terry across the ring.
They main evented in Texas Stadium, for God's sake. It was the most magic 3-on-3 combination. Perfect time, perfect place, perfect setup, perfect participants. And they drew nothing but money for 2 years.
What we had created in the ring was phenomenal. Anybody would want that. But then when you got out of the ring, you had all the other problems, though, that came with the Birds. They were trouble looking for trouble.
You know, they just raised hell.
They'd drink all night, and then they'd get in the ring, and they'd sweat all them booze out. They always told me that the best cure for hangover was wrestling. Yeah.
Terry's temperament was like so even until he drank.
My parents were at a bar, and a man was hitting on my mom. My dad became very enraged, and there was a bar fight. The cops went to restrain my dad to calm him down, which I think did the opposite. He beat up a cop car with his hands cuffed behind his back.
It was like you had taken a hammer about this big around and hit the hood of the car and knocked dents in it where he had headbutted it.
He was kind of a real spoiled kid. You know, that's Terry. He did stuff like that.
Terry Gordy was not going to back up from anybody, nor was there anybody walking that was really going to make him back up.
Do you think there was a point where like it got a little bit out of control as far as like the partying, or that's just the way it was in the 80s and early 90s?
Jeez. I mean, if you look back at it today, from today's perspective, it got out of control at the very beginning.
You know, having people throw different things at you, like, here, take a shot, y'all are awesome, or here, you know, take this for your pain so you can sleep, or here, take this so you can stay up and drive 8 hours to the next show.
I don't know exactly when the evolution happened from smoking marijuana, drinking booze, to more of a pill problem.
Despite their wild reputation, in 1984, Terry Gordy and the Fabulous Freebirds catch the attention of Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation.
Was it a week? Did they last a week?
They were in the meeting with Vince, hungover, still partially inebriated. Terry fell asleep. And that didn't get over with Vince too good.
That was the only time that the Freebirds ever worked for the WWF.
After wrestling a handful of matches, the Freebirds flame out at the WWF. But Terry has a chance to take his career in a new direction.
That is my dad and Bruiser Brody. It's in Japan.
My dad got the opportunity to go work in Japan. The Japanese wrestling is very different from what it is over here. When you get the Freebirds and more glitz and glamour, they see that and they're really not interested. They were more interested in Terry Gordy by himself.
The Monster American, the Abdullah the Butchers, or the Bruiser Brodies, or the Stan Hansens, or Terry Gordy. These giant guys that were just crazy and beat up everybody in their path, they became the darlings of the Japanese wrestling fan. And that's the kind of atmosphere that Terry could flourish in.
He loved the hard, physical style associated with Japan. And that's why he became one of the biggest and best stars to ever cross the ocean and work there.
It takes a big toll physically with the injuries. Putting your body through that, every bump is like a mild car wreck.
I knew that he was having knee problems. One of my big concerns was my dad wasn't gonna blow out his knees.
He tore both of his ACLs. He was going to Japan 6 months a year, working as a main event star over there at a high level with no ACL in either knee.
He had to have double knee surgery, but the doctor told him he had to take the weight off.
Main event.
So he contacted Richard Simmons. Yeah! Right? This huge 6'5" man just, you know, jazzercise or whatever Richard Simmons did. Come on, Terry, you got this. Yeah.
Terry was like 300, 320, and then he pared down to like maybe 265, something like that.
And you see the more athletic, built up Terry Gordy. You can absolutely blame that on Richard Simmons.
Now leaner and more powerful and working in a physical style that plays to his strengths, Terry's performance in the ring reaches new heights.
Terry Gordy versus Misawa.
Oh.
June 1st, 1991.
Yeah, in my opinion, that's one of the top 5 matches of all time. The Japanese crowd, traditionally, they will ooh and ah. This match, they tore the house down. Terry Gordy was a master of his craft. People look at him and they see this big monster doing all these power moves. But if you really watch, you'll see the little things that he done in the ring that people just don't do. Even down to the chin lock in this match, he's actually using his fingers to try to pry fingers away. And this is a work, but that little bit just adds so much more.
Terry was a guy who made everything he did mean something. And when he threw a punch, brother, it was a thing of beauty. It was so animated, it connected, it looked great. He was just simply one of the best.
He was the first American ever to win the Triple Crown Championship. He was the top guy in Japan at that time.
It's great to be alive, and it's great to be #1 in Japan.
In Japan, Terry starts working with Dr. Death Steve Williams in a tag team known for their brutality, the Miracle Violence Connection.
Double clothesline. If the aliens landed tomorrow and you had to pick 2 human beings to represent Earth in a fight to the death, pick Terry Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams.
The strength of Dr. Death.
They brought that Japanese style over to the U.S.
In my opinion, they may be the best tag team in the world today.
They're not resting up in between Japanese tours. They're taking on these very physical matches on a very regular basis.
Terry and Doc did a lot of tours together. So to keep the Freebird thing going, they needed to replace Terry when he was gone, and that's what I did.
We're not following no rules that we don't want to follow.
Terry, when he wasn't in Japan, he would join us. That's a very heavy schedule.
I honestly believe that it was too much.
I mean, really, it was just part of life. Like, he would just be gone for a long time, and it was like a treat almost when he would be home.
I had to smile.
Life at one point was really good. We did normal family things. He took us skating. He taught me how to fish and ride a bike. All the dad stuff. He did that for us when he could. But it just wasn't a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, he hated to be separated from his family, man. My name is Richard A. Slinger. I went under the ring name of Richard Slinger in Japan. Trained and lived over there. I'm the nephew of Terry Gordy. He would talk to me about being over there in Japan. He said I would go into a state of deep, dark, miserable depression.
I know it wore on him. He looked tired. I know he missed being home, and he missed his own mom, and he missed his kids, and he missed his wife. Being on the road 360 days a year, that wears on you.
You live in hotels, airplanes, rental cars. It's just constant go. Your mind never really has time to reset, to relax, to say, okay, where am I at in this life?
A lot of times in those days, especially the well-seasoned travelers to Japan, they would take whatever pills that they took so they could sleep, and when they woke up, they'd be in Japan.
The drugs can be seen as a necessary evil when you're going from time zone to time zone, when you're expected to be at your best on a nightly basis, when you feel far from your best, when you're worn down. And it is a very short step from use as needed to use as liked.
While on a tour with Steve Williams, Terry suffers his first serious overdose.
First time he dropped on me, accumulated too many pills, those halcyons. We went out that night and he just dropped and didn't CPR. And ambulance took him
He was in the hospital. He didn't remember what happened. When they brought me in, I had to refresh his mind, tell him what he'd done and this and that. I tried to straighten him up from there, but Terry Gordy had a problem with drugs.
There's going to be a time where your body tells you, where your mind tells you that you need to stop. And I really believe that during that time, my dad was at that point.
It's a tough business. You know, it's a heartless business.
Set to return to Japan, Terry boards a flight that will change his life forever.
Terry's accumulated so many pills that I'm having to push him with a wheelchair. He's out, you know, he's out. So 30 minutes before the plane lands, so I look at him and he's dying on me.
Before a flight to Japan, Terry Gordy consumes an excessive amount of muscle relaxers. Dr. Death Steve Williams notices Terry has stopped breathing.
He's dying on me. I mean, he's turning blue and he's sucking barely any air, and like he was about to swallow his tongue. And I used to be able to knock him back loose if I slapped him a couple times in the face or kick him out of it, you know. Just like if you put somebody asleep, right. If you hit him in the back, it'll knock him back out of it. Well, I did it and he wouldn't come back alive. So right then I knew he was dying. Stewardess got up, man. They was all freaking out. And I was giving him CPR to keep him alive, to keep that heart going. As soon as we landed, the ambulance was right there.
I had to get him off the plane, get him in the ambulance, and get him to the hospital. They just started emergency procedures, and what little bit of Japanese I spoke and what little bit of English they spoke, we were able to communicate about Terry's condition. Biggest fear that I might be losing my uncle, Terry, in there. He was in a coma for a couple of days. I remember being right there by him pretty much the whole time, camping out beside his bed. When he woke up, he started calling my name, Richard. You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm here. Eventually, he was able to be maneuvered between me and the nurse into a wheelchair to go to the shower. You know, maybe a little bit of cold water. He might show that he still has the feeling, and he did. His face grimaced a little bit whenever I sprayed him with cold water.
Nice, man.
I was like, you know, we might have some luck here of getting him back to normal.
They called my stepmother, and she flew over to be with him.
And she got him home, and my mother was there to greet him, and she said that was a heartbreaker to see him coming off the airplane in a wheelchair.
He couldn't really
Foley had
carry
a
on
100,
that much of a conversation.
Mick Foley
He was very quiet.
A 100.
There was an obvious difference.
Crazy, bro.
He had lost a lot of his motor skills. He was very slow to react. He had to relearn a lot of things. He had some permanent physical and mental damage from that. He wasn't the same person anymore.
Whatever happened, oxygen to the brain, he was unconscious too long, whatever all that medical hoo-ha is, it erased something in his brain.
There's this local promoter. He was kind enough to give us the key, and we was training within a couple of weeks of me coming back from that tour. Ironic, you know, somebody training me. Here I am, I'm teaching my uncle, you know, this is how it goes, remember?
There was progress, and we were all hoping that he would just miraculously kick out at some point, and it would all come back to him, and he would be Terry Gordy again.
During the last year of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we heard that he had started wrestling little independent shows, and I said, if Terry is anywhere back and anywhere near what he needs to be. My God, if we could get him up here, that'd be great. So I made the arrangements to have him come in.
I have added another member to Cornette's militia! Here's Gordy.
Everybody in the locker room in Smoky Mountain had known him for years and liked him and was wanting to help. But he couldn't do a promo anymore.
And I'm coming to show you, boy, that I'm going to take that title and I'm going to take it, and there ain't nothing you or your old lady can do about it.
And we kept thinking it'll come back to him, or he's taking steps. But he'd just walk up to you and he'd just stand there. Then you'd look, oh, Terry, do you need something? Yeah, Jim, I was just wondering if you'd like me to do the power bomb. Yes, Terry, if you'd like to, please.
And there is Gordy, sets him up for that power bomb.
Because he had been such a great wrestler and he could still do these moves. And it was the same frame, but there wasn't any life in it. He was going through the motions, but the face, the expression, the intent, everything that makes you a personality, it just was gone. Because he wasn't there anymore. That was gone.
Despite a challenging rehabilitation, Terry stages a comeback, culminating in a legendary match against Cactus Jack at IWA's now infamous King of the Deathmatch tournament.
You become the king of the death match by kicking out of all the moves.
Terry and I are going to face in the first round of what was known at the time as the Kawasaki Dream Match tournament that's gone down in lore as being the King of the Death Match tournament.
3, 2, 1.
One of the holes in his game since the accident on the plane was the punches were no longer there. And out of concern for his reputation, I said, Terry, I said, you're a legend here. I said, you got to really bring those punches. To his credit, I didn't have to tell him that more than once.
I've read letters that said Terry Gordy was the king of the death match. And all that happened after the accident. So I can only imagine full Terry Gordy having a death match.
Yeah, we did pretty good.
We didn't mean to have a death match.
And it resulted in what may have been the greatest post-match interview of Terry's career.
Shit.
I felt like maybe we pushed the hands of time back just a little bit. But it was not meant to be.
Despite an impressive performance at King of the Deathmatch, it's clear that Terry Gordy's overdose has changed him.
I think that he continued to wrestle after the accident is because that's all he knew. That's all he ever did. He wasn't a cashier for a grocery store and then started wrestling. Like, he wrestled.
There were a lot of people rooting for my dad.
Henry Bam Bam Gordy, who has been pronounced critically dead twice, is making a comeback.
He could work through a match. It just wasn't the same.
I'm sure that was the hope, that maybe if they just kept at it, that he would eventually come to it, but it was never there. You can see it even in pictures. In his eyes, he was full of life. And then you look at pictures after the coma, and he looks like a deer in headlights.
Terry Gordy, probably one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, and of course, a legendary heel and the member of the Fabulous Freebird group, probably the greatest heel trio in the business.
In 1998, Terry agrees to film an interview out of character. And for the first time, fans at home are able to see for themselves the change in his cognitive capabilities.
I've seen parts of the shoot interview. The emotions when I first saw that, I was enraged, a little embarrassed.
Do you have any good road stories?
Yeah, man, there's a bunch of them, you know.
What are some that stick out in your mind?
seeing your dad like that, he couldn't remember a lot of stuff from the past. The coma took a lot of his memories away. But in that, they're just hounding him for all these questions, and as his daughter, you just want them to leave him alone.
Now, why was your stay so short in WCW? Was it Japan? You wanted to go back to Japan, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I guess I should talk a bit about the goal here. We want to get Terry over as a babyface. Hayes is joining into kind of under Ric Flair's wing. He's going to move up as well from this, but we need to make sure Terry, as the babyface, doesn't everybody turns on him, right? So he's got to at least get some kind of comeuppance. He's not ready to go up against Flair, but we can at least give him a good win over his partner and continue to elevate him. He might have a light heavyweight title or a heavyweight title coming in his future, you know? But yeah, so we'll keep him up top. I think that'd be a good co-main event, probably. Maybe one more match.
As Terry attempts to get back into the spotlight, his longtime friend, Freebird Michael Hayes, convinces the WWF to add Terry to their roster.
Vince Executioner. Of course, when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, why would they do that? And really, it was to protect him, and I'm glad they did.
It was a good respect move on the part of WWE. They didn't want to destroy Terry Gordy by putting him on TV as Terry Gordy and him not being Terry Gordy.
Michael Hayes was able to get him in with Terry as a menacing, foreboding executioner. With me and Paul Bearer, we became kind of like a faction.
As soon as Mankind is buried alive, The Undertaker, his hand will be raised by the official.
Then the executioner came, friend in need, a friend indeed. Part of what made Terry's character so intriguing is that he was like a man-child. He breaks in at age 14 years old. He is a child among men, but at the same time, he's a man among men. When it gets to WWE, there's still the ways of a child. And that's not the way to succeed in a main event with The Undertaker.
Off the rope, scoops him up. What's he gonna do with him? Slams him down.
It was pretty sad, man. Pretty sad to watch. My Uncle Terry, and he was once at his prime, and from doing that to, you know, not hitting on all cylinders, you know, it was pretty sad.
And I'm sure all the people that looked up to him and that he helped along the way in his career were just, I don't know how else to describe it, but heartbreaking. Just looking at someone that is like a superhero to you and just seeing, I don't want to say helpless, but he wasn't the same person.
An Undertaker had to say, it won't work.
And the executioner has been executed.
Everybody loved him, but, you know, he wasn't there anymore.
It's also a bit sad to overhear a conversation he had with a woman on an airplane where she goes to take some medication, and he goes, "Got any extras?" She gave him a couple pills. So he was at a point where he was taking anything, regardless of whether he knew what it was. We would be worried because he would go from being completely coherent to obviously under the influence of something seemingly within minutes. And so he had reached a pretty dangerous point. It's hard for me to say because I looked up to him, and I will always appreciate the kindness he showed me when he was on top of the world and I was breaking in. But you know, we've got to be adults out there on the road. We look out for each other, but you also have to look out for yourself. We would have to, on a few occasions, try to track him down when he was not in his hotel room. I think it was about the third time that Paul Bearer and I were searching the roads and making drives and calling his name. We realized that this was not going to be a long-term team.
And have somewhere for them to go, so we're gonna move it back to...
When Terry's short-lived stint in the WWF comes to an end, he finds himself back on the indie circuit.
It's hard to grasp as a kid what that was, to see the downfall of him being on top to doing little independent shows around Tennessee and Georgia. I was at those indie shows. As a kid, it was fun, but looking back at that, it's really sad.
I think the last time I saw Terry was at an independent wrestling show. During intermission, Terry's daughter was taking Polaroids of Terry and the fans in the ring. And there were only about 2 people who made that trip into the ring. Seeing literal minutes go by with no one on that line, no one getting into the ring, just struck me as being extraordinarily sad. And I'm over in a different part of the building at a table, and I'm signing autographs, feeling guilty, saying they should be on that line. That's the line they should be. There's the real superstar. There was part of me that wanted to get out there in the ring, grab that microphone, and start yelling at people, trying to knock some sense into them. Don't you understand? This is a legend. He's here in your midst, and you can see him. You can get a photo taken with him. And times had changed.
As his wrestling career winds down, Terry redirects his focus and embraces what matters to him most.
During this time, he was home. I got to see my dad more than I had ever seen him in my entire life. I look back on that, and as rough of a time as that was for him and our family, it was the time of my life where I got to know my dad and become really great friends with him. We would see each other every single weekend. I'd go pick him up, I'd take him to the gym, we'd work out, I'd take him home. It was probably the best years of my life, getting to hang out with my dad and really getting to talk to him and getting to know the person that he really was. I'm really thankful for that time that he wasn't on the road, that he was at home, because yeah, we became best friends. We really did.
Do you have anything you want to say to your fans out there that are watching this video?
I'm just, I'm really, really sorry, you know, that, sorry about going to Japan, you know, and ODing and stuff, you know.
He was actually doing a show, and he asked me to go do the show with him. And we were actually going to tag that night. And I couldn't go. Next day, I get a call from my cousin Richard. And his exact words were, "Ray, get down on your knees and start praying, because your dad is on this mountain and he stopped breathing."
After wrestling an indie match the previous night, Terry is found unresponsive at his home in Saudi Daisy, Tennessee.
I got in a car as soon as I could and traveled to his home. I was there before emergency services. One of the boys that stayed with Terry the night before, he was doing the CPR, and while he was doing chest compressions, I still hate knowing this, but Terry was already gone, and I was trying to bring him back by, slapping him in the face, because I remember Doc telling me that's what he did to bring him back, and I thought, maybe this is one last thing I can resort to bring Terry back.
There was a police officer standing in front of the door, guarding the door and wouldn't let anybody in. I put my hands on the police officer and told him he was going to let me in that door. And that's when Richard grabbed me and told me that he was gone.
My mom knew that there was an emergency, and they said to get to my granny's quickly. And I just hear my mom scream, "No." She had to tell us that he had passed.
On July 16th, 2001, Terry Gordy dies of congestive heart failure caused by a blood clot. He is only 40 years old.
Of all the stuff that my dad did, and the lifestyle that he led, and all the partying that he did, it's amazing that it wasn't an OD. It wasn't anything like that.
Maybe his legacy is you can't push yourself too hard. You can't take shit you're not supposed to take. You can't do shit you're not supposed to do over and over on a regular basis.
Whoa, let's go.
If you sat Terry down, if he was here right now, and said, "Hey, Terry, do you think maybe if we tell this story, it'll make some of the other guys stay away from it?" He probably would say, "Yeah, go ahead and tell it." He wouldn't be worried about whether he looked good or not, but if he could help somebody else.
It's just such a tragedy. I mean, the wrestling lost not only one of the best workers ever, but he was a good guy.
Why did Terry Gordy touch so many people's lives? Well, with the wrestling fans, it was easy because he was great. He was great at what he did. He was exciting to watch. If you like wrestling, he did it better than almost anybody else in it.
I'm not claiming to be the best wrestler in the world, but you know something, world champion, this right here does matter.
Terry Gordy is a surprise.
He will never be forgotten. He contributed so much to this business, more than people realize.
Gordy putting on a clinic here.
What I've gotten most out of wrestling is how much people just really love my dad. So if I walk away with just that, it's been a very healing experience.
But his influence can be seen almost every week on television. Whether it's the hyper-realistic but theatrically enjoyable punches he threw, or somebody winding up a clothesline before throwing it hard. Anytime you see any variation of a powerbomb, that's Terry Gordy.
Don't it feel good sitting up here? I mean, up at top, looking down at everything. Don't it feel good?
And that is the story of Terry Gordy there. That ends our special edition. Let's just run this show and see how that goes. Let's see, we'll get Kenji Yamada to win. Alright, yep, that's fine. Alright. Okay. Nice. Pretty good. Excellent work out there. A 92. A little bit of lack of psychology, but no big deal. We had a wild brawl. Went for an 88, and then this is a little bit experimental. This long match. Ooh, too long. too long of a match. Oh, shoot, I had All Out Pace going. Okay. That's going to be rough. I'm supposed to renegotiate my TV deal, so that's going to be really rough. But otherwise, a good show, right? In 80? Why did that increase? I'm so confused. Wait, what's going on? We still... Oh, these are like my European regions. But it didn't drop us down a huge amount or anything, which is kind of interesting. Man, I should have made Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes the cherry on top. But, alas, we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.